This is a re-recording of the previous night's Teach Me to VGC lesson. Due to several scuffed issues, I'm having to re-record this, and also due to having worked so hard to get this set up, I'm not willing to just let it all go to waste. So I am doing a pre-recorded re-recording of this lesson. There will be musical accompaniment, though. I am Professor Icarus, and I will be your teacher in tonight's lesson. Paldea region and its returning faces. We're gonna start with the Paldea. Okay. We are gonna start with the Paldea region. This is the region that will be available in Generation 9 of Pokemon, taking place in Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet. The region is based off of Spain, Portugal, and Andorra. What this lesson will cover: Pokemon that have been confirmed to be returning through official announcements or leaks. The Pokemon in this lesson will have in previous generations proven themselves to be powerful combatants in the VGC format. They will also have to have proven this without the need for generational gimmicks. This means Pokemon such as Lucario, who generally, in most cases, has struggled in single combat and doubles, or Pokemon like Kangaskhan, will not be in here. What this lesson will not cover: new or unannounced Pokemon, new moves that are being introduced in this generation, updated movesets. We will be looking at their current movesets within Sword and Shield, or their last known moveset, and be assuming that they will be keeping these moves, despite the fact that we all know they won't be, to some degree. We will not be covering terrestrialization, story leaks, or buffs and debuffs coming in this new generation. The last three will be all, well, other than the story leaks, the updated movesets, terrestrialization, and buffs and debuffs we will be covering at a later date. So let's start off with what is VGC format? VGC format, or the Video Game Championship, is the format for officially sanctioned competition by the Pokemon Company International. It is a 4v4 double battle format. In this format, there are no duplicate items or Pokemon. This includes using regional forms. Formats often ban Pokemon, which are generally in the early stages, cover legendaries, and almost always mythics, such as Genesect, Darkrai, Mew, etc. Below we have 4 examples, 3 of which are each incorrect for one reason or another. The first is incorrect due to 2 Raichus. You can only pick either Alolan or regular Raichu. You cannot bring both. The second one has 2 Donphans. This is similar to the first. You can only have 1 Donphan. Given Paradox Pokemon, we do not know if the paradox forms of Donphan, such as Great Tusk or Iron Tread, will be counted as a Donphan for the means of VGC. However, I will be under the assumption that they will not be, as they are being given their own names. I could be wrong, though. The third one is incorrect due to Koraidon being in this team. Assuming that this is going to be a team for the first season or series of Scarlet and Violet, Koraidon will more than likely not be usable. This going in with the trend for first seasons. The fourth one is perfectly fine. There are no duplicate Pokemon. There are no legendaries. Well, you can use legendaries generally if they are a lower tier legendary, such as, say, a Zapdos. Generally, anything that's part of a legendary trio. But moving on. Battle flow. Both combatants will pick 4 Pokemon in the battle preview, where they can see the opposing teams. They will not be able to see their items, abilities, or movesets. This means that you will have the time you're given to pick 4 of your Pokemon to go up against your opponent's team, not knowing which 4 they will actually pick. The battle will be a double battle, meaning 2v2. The battle ends when either a player's team is completely knocked out or a player runs out of time. Each player is given their own pool of time. If you were to run out of your clock, then you will be considered to be the loser of that game. This is your spoiler warning. I'm going to give you all this time to back out, and tune out if you do not want spoilers. If you have not begun playing Pokemon Scarlet or Violet and you do not want spoilers for potentially returning Pokemon, this is your time to back out. Okay, for those of you who are still here, let us begin. The first Pokemon on the list is Raichu. The standard Raichu, which is I guess the term would be a Cantonian Raichu, has access to the Lightning Rod ability through its Hidden, which will redirect electric attacks to itself, giving it immunity and then boosting its special attack. It also has access to Fake Out, which is a very popular opening move, causing flinch and almost always going first, outside of Protect. Next is the Alolan form, which has the ability Surge Surfer. The Alolan form may not be available immediately, but through the Surge Surfer ability, it will be doubling its speed. No Pokemon is going to have the ability Electric Surge other than Pincurchin in this game, meaning there won't be many easy ways to set up electric terrain unless they introduce a new Pokemon this gen that has that ability. Next is Arcanine. Standard Arcanine, which is usually common as a support in VGC, is commonly used, has the ability Intimidate, which will lower the attack stat of all opposing Pokemon. I believe there is an ability that, I believe it's Inner Focus, that will also make a Pokemon immune to Intimidate. Arcanine also has access to the attack Snarl and Will-O-Wisp. Being a fire type, Will-O-Wisp's accuracy will be boosted. It has very balanced stats and can be trained to be either a physical attacker, a special attacker, or a support. Hisuian, which may require home in order to use, trades off Intimidate for the ability Justified, which, if we can locate a good Pokemon, a good beat-up user in this generation, will potentially become a powerhouse Pokemon. Justified is also the standard Arcanine's hidden ability, if I remember correctly. Assistant, can you potentially check my facts on that one? Thank you. Okay, yep, its hit ability is Justified. I am also being informed that there is a bit of a typo that came on this, and Hisuian Arcanine does actually, okay, it does have Justified as its hidden as well. Thank you. Next is Slowbro and Slowking. These Pokemon I am pairing together as generally the two of them both have the same stats and move sets that are used. Generally, the only difference is one is physically defensive while the other is specially defensive. They're often used in Trick Room teams due to their low speed and high bulk. They're also common to see in early stages of a generation's meta, as they're typically easy to build and are considered to be a safe bet for a team. Next is Gengar, a very popular Glass Cannon Ghost type, prioritizing special attack and speed. Gengar learns a multitude of moves from different types and can also be used for several gimmick teams such as Perish Song, which has been a popular strategy in VGC, given the generation has the tools to use it properly. Gengar's popular items are Life Orb, Focus Sash, and Black Sludge. Next is Gyarados, the evolution of Magikarp. It has the ability Intimidate or Moxie. Intimidate is its most common ability, which, as discussed before, will lower the physical attack of all opposing Pokemon. It fits a damage roll and will also occasionally be used to be a pivot with Intimidate. Pivoting being swapping it out into something that can easily take the hit, and then swapping back to Gyarados the following turn to further lower physical attack. Gyarados also has access to the attack Dragon Dance, which will raise its physical attack and its speed by one stage. We now make our way to our first pseudo-legendary, which is the Generation 1 pseudo-legendary, Dragonite. A pseudo-legendary is a Pokemon that has a base stat total of 600 and is not a legendary. Typically, every generation has at least one of these. I believe Generation 2 is the only generation up till this date which has had 2. That being Metagross and Salamence. However, Salamence is considered to be the actual pseudo-legendary, as typically another major part of being a pseudo-legendary is difficulty to capture the base form. Usually you have to go to a specific room somewhere in order to find one. Dragonite being able to reach Area 3 of the Safari Zone. And Fish to catch a Dratini. Dragonite is used for having the hidden ability Multiscale, which, while it's at full health, cuts the first amount of damage it takes by half. In past generations, it had access to Extreme Speed through Egg Move. This Egg Move would be passed on from originally an event Dragonite. They might remove that this gen. They might also keep it as an egg move and just have us wait for Dragonite to have access to it. If it does have to wait, Dragonite will still have access generally to the Elemental Punches, Dragon Claw, Hurricane, and usually a good group of coverage moves, as well as Dragon Dance and Roost. It's commonly using weakness policy due to multi-scale, meaning it will be able to take the first hit, gain the 2 stages of attack, and then go on the offensive. We now make our way to Generation 2 with Azumarill, the evolution of Marill. Azumarill, despite appearing weak due to low base stats, has the ability Huge Power, which will double its attack stat, making any bonuses to its attack twice as effective. It has the Water Fairy typing, which, while not being very good for covering one another's weaknesses, does give good coverage against several types, as well as Dragon Immunity. It also gets stabbed from both Waterfall and Play Rough, which are both high-powered physical attack moves. It also has access to Aqua Jet, which is a +1 priority water physical attack move. It's commonly paired with the item Assault Vest. Next is Murkrow. This is a Prankster Pokemon, which is a Pokemon that has, with the ability Prankster. Prankster says that any status-based move will gain +1 priority. This means that it's a stat-lowering move such as Feather Dance, or status-inflicting moves such as Thunder Wave will gain +1 priority. It will also gain priority to Tailwind and Roost. With Whimsicott not returning this generation, at least as of the launch of the game, Murkrow will likely be used as a substitute in order to set up early Tailwinds. We will go into a few other possible Tailwind setters later in the lesson. One of Murkrow's benefits of having its Dark typing is giving it immunity to other Prankster Pokemon. This means that if Sableye decides it's going to use Taunt on Murkrow, Murkrow will be immune. Given that Murkrow evolves, it is often paired with the item Eviolite. Actually, it's not often, it is generally only paired with Eviolite. Next is Scizor, which is a steel bug type, meaning it only has one weakness, which is fire, which is a ×4 weakness. Scizor also has the ability Technician, which will add 50% to any attack below base 60 power. Its attack of choice being the priority move Bullet Punch, which is a stab move, meaning that Bullet Punch will be dealing 60 base plus stab with a +1 priority. This being paired with Scizor's already high attack stat and not needing to invest in speed means that Scizor is often used as a powerful bruiser Pokemon, able to take hits and deal good quick damage in or out of Trick Room, which is a popular strategy in game meta. And just like that, we have made it to our second pseudo-legendary, Tyranitar, also often abbreviated as T-Tar. It is the Gen 2 pseudo-legendary, starting at the Pokemon Larvitar. It has a high base attack and defense stat. It is also a Sandstorm setter, using the ability Sandstream, which is meaning that it will set up Sandstorm, and usually the other Pokemon in the team will be immune to Sandstorm, or will benefit to some degree from Sandstorm being up. It's often used sets are usually a Dragon Dance Sweeper, which foregoes its defensive stats for attack and speed, or a slower tank-based set, which goes fully into its bulk. Common items on Tyranitar are Assault Vest, Weakness Policy, or in some cases a Chopal Berry, in order to help cover its ×4 weakness to fighting. Moving on to Gen 3, we have Pelipper. It is currently going to be the only rain setter, the only Pokemon with Drizzle, unless they introduce a new one. Rain teams are always considered to be popular at any point during the meta, this being because of their wide variety of options and powerful defensive Pokemon, that many of which will gain double speed under rain due to the ability Swift Swim. One of the other big perks of Pelipper being that it learns Hurricane, which under rain will gain additional accuracy, going from a, I believe, base 50 accuracy to a base 100 accuracy. Gardevoir. Yes, the Pokemon that probably has the most Rule 34 written about it up till this point. Often used as a special sweeper due to high special attack and high speed. It has 3 abilities, all of which have been used at some point. However, generally, the ability Telepathy is its most popular. Next Pokemon is Hariyama. It is another Fake Out user. This time being one with heavy bulk, having not the highest defensive stats, having very high health. It's appeared in several formats for its ability to both wall and disrupt opponents, flow through flinching, force retreats, and use of Wide Guard, as well as often having the attack knock off. Wide Guard makes it so that any move that will hit both of your Pokemon will not hit either of them. We're up to our next prankster Pokemon, being Sableye. It is a very popular prankster Pokemon, primarily focusing on inflicting status effects, as well as messing with priority using Quash, and then stalling with Recover. After Sableye, we have Torkoal, which, since its gaining of the ability Drought, has become the preferred Sunsetter in any format that Groudon is not allowed in, which has been most of them, given its bulkier stats over Ninetales and being far easier to obtain. However, this generation, Torkoal could potentially suffer from a lack of its most popular partner, which is Venusaur. However, with Jumpluff also having Chlorophyll and knowing several of the moves that Venusaur would typically bring in, primarily being Fleet Powder, Jumpluff may have a potential to replace this slot. If that happens, Torkoal will more than likely take a much higher focus on doing damage, while having Jumpluff keep it safe through the use of attacks like Pollen Puff or Cotton Spore in order to help bolster defense by lowering attack. Salamence, the Gen 3 pseudo-legendary that I listed earlier, is another Pokemon with Intimidate that can be actually built to be either a physical attacker or a special attacker. It can also be a mixed attacker because of this, and is often built with a negative defensive nature. Generally, if built physical, its only special attack move will be Draco Meteor, and if it's built special, it will still always have Draco Meteor. Draco Meteor, while always requiring a move tutor, generally one is found in every generation at some point, tends to be looked at as one of Salamence's signature moves, despite not learning it. Up to Generation 4 with Pachirisu. We're going to be at an interesting point right now, seeing as of now, there's not going to be a lot of Pokemon that learn Follow Me. And Pachirisu is going to be one of the primary ones that can. Clefairy is not in the game, which in the previous two generations was the more popular Follow Me user. Pachirisu can also use Follow Me to wall with Volt Absorb against ground type attackers, and then on off turns use Super Fang to cut the opposing Pokemon's HP in half, making them easier to kill, helping heavily against the tankier threats, turning what would normally be a 2 to 3 turn kill into a 1 turn kill. Next is Gastrodon. Praise the Slug. The Slug God. The based Slug. It is the best Pokemon. Yes, I am being biased. No, you cannot change my mind. And yes, this is what peak performance looks like. You may not like it, but this is peak performance. I am being told by my assistants that I'm acting strange, so let's move on to the actual review of Gastrodon. It's has a powerful defensive typing, giving it only one weakness, which is a ×4. Mixed with its high defenses, as well as having access to the attack's recover and stockpile, which will heal it and give it further defense. It is immune to water damage with its Storm Drain ability. Storm Drain will also redirect any single target water attacks to it. With its hidden Sand Force, it will gain heavier damage on, I believe, ground type moves that are. However, generally Storm Drain is its go-to ability because of the immunity. It is a bulky menace, and it is one of my favorite Pokemon of the last few years. Bronzong, one of the most common Trick Room setters in VGC. If you see a Bronzong, it is probably going to be trying to set up Trick Room. However, issue with that is good luck one-shotting it. It has two abilities that give it immunity to one of its weaknesses, that being Levitate or Heat Proof. So you will need to figure out which one Bronzong has, as it won't have its hidden, which is Light Metal. It has base 116 defense and special defense. Often will often carry a mental herb to shake off taunts. And is generally seen as just having a way out of almost any situation, while not being a very good attacker in it by itself. Speaking of good attackers, though, Garchomp. It is the Gen 4 pseudo-legendary. A lot of the pseudo-legendaries are coming back this gen. Makes me happy. Garchomp. Despite the fact that I love this Pokemon, there's really not much I can really say about it. It's just a powerful hitter, even when its ability isn't doing much of anything for it, that being Sandveil, which is why usually it'll have Rough Skin, which effectively works as a Rocky Helmet. It has a high base attack of 130 and a base speed of 102. Those 2 extra points in its base means it'll be able to outspeed base 100 Pokemon. That being something that comes in a lot of handy, as that will mean you either need to invest a little bit less in its speed, which you're not going to be doing, or it'll just easily outspeed those Pokemon. There is one Gen 4 Pokemon I forgot. No. We have a Paldea. I forgot that Garchomp is actually closer up on the list in its generation. Paldea being a second Sandstorm sitter, other than Tyranitar. It has a monotype, so it does not have the Time 4 weakness. Trade-off here being that it has many more weaknesses. It fulfills generally more of a support role than T-Tar, usually using things like Yawn to force opponents to switch out to avoid getting put to sleep, and following up with things like Earth Power. Rotom. Rotom is the next Pokemon that we're covering. You might be for those not versed in Pokemon, if this is your first rodeo, you might be asking yourself, Icarus, Professor, why are there 6 Pokemon on the board, on the screen? These are all the same Pokemon. We actually went out in the field, got a Rotom, and put it in 5 different appliances. This is what happened. First, we have Wash Rotom, which is the little blue one in the bottom corner. That is considered to be an electric water type. Next, across from that in the red, we have Heat Rotom, which is the electric fire type. At the bottom, we have Mo Rotom, electric grass. Up at the top in the purple, we have Frost Rotom, electric ice. Next to Frost Rotom and the base Rotom, which is in the center, we have Fan Rotom. It is a electric flying type. And in the center, we have ya boy, base Rotom at electric ghost. All 6 of these forms have the same ability, which is levitate. Now, you might be asking yourself, wait, isn't flying already immune to ground? Yes. Then surely they would have swapped Fan Rotom's ability for something more useful, right? One would think so, but no. Fan Rotom is a flying type with levitate, meaning it is the only form of Rotom other than base that is almost never used in combat. They did my boy so dirty. However, now that Togekiss isn't here, Fan Rotom could see play in order to use Air Slash. But let's be real, most people are still going to just be sticking to Wash Rotom and Heat Rotom. Those being the 2 most commonly used in the VGC formats. Getting access to Hydro Pump and Overheat, 2 highly powerful elemental moves of their own typing. Mo Rotom gets access to, I can't remember what the move is off the top of my head, but it is the grass type move that lowers its special attack after use, with Frost Rotom getting access to Blizzard. Leaf Storm. I am being informed that the attack is Leaf Storm that Mo Rotom gets. Moving on from Rotom. All those different forms can be a bit of a hassle. Is Amoonguss. The giant fungus Pokemon. It is the evolution of Fungus. It is also the primary user of Spore and Rage Powder in VGC. This being due to its bulk, it is more likely able to get its Rage Powder, its Spore off. In previous generations, it also would carry Clear Smog to get rid of stat boosts of the opposing Pokemon, and in some cases, Mega Drain to heal itself. Its abilities are Effect Spore and Regenerator. Effect Spore being able to cause poison, paralysis, or sleep if being hit by a contact move, although not guaranteed. It is the fact that it would give a chance for punishment that people enjoyed about Effect Spore. Its other ability being Regenerator, which, if swapped out, will heal Amoonguss by a percentage of its health. The main draw of Effect Spore, though, would be just having the threat of it would effectively make it so that the opposing Pokemon would think twice about faking it out, because you can fake out the Amoonguss and then Effect Spore would activate and you're still put to sleep, meaning you accomplished next to nothing by faking out a Pokemon that was going to be putting one of your Pokemon to sleep anyway. Volcarona. Base 135 special attack with access to Quiver Dance. Now, points to anyone in the class who can tell me why that is a big thing. I'll give you a hint. It has to do kind of a little bit with, well, if you look at Garchomp, what we said about Garchomp, it'll give you a good answer. If you'll remember, Garchomp has a base 130 physical attack, and I regarded that as high. Quiver Dance raises Volcarona's special attack stat by 1 stage, meaning that 135 base special attack just got higher. Volcarona also just got faster and bulkier due to the special defense boost. That also comes with Quiver Dance. Volcarona just got harder to kill. Pair this with its ability to heal using Giga Drain and deal heavy damage to both Pokemon with Heat Wave, dealing damage to a single target while potentially boosting its own stats with Fiery Dance, or hitting for Bug Stab with Bug Buzz. You could easily say that Volcarona is one of those Pokemon that was so good they made it twice. In Sword and Shield, they created Frostmoth, which was to serve as an ice-type foil to Volcarona's fire bug type. We're now moving on to Gen 5's pseudo-legendary, that being a Hydreigon, who sports a 125 base special attack, 10 points lower than Volcarona. It has ground immunity due to Levitate, is a popular Draco Meteor user, and other than that, there's really not much to say about Hydreigon. It's generally regarded as just being a good, powerful Pokemon. When it came out, it didn't have any big checks. This having gone out the window that after Fairy was introduced the following generation, giving Hydreigon a ×4 weakness, when before it most of any weaknesses that it did have were only ×1. It was also the first pseudo-legendary that, for its generation, did not have a ×4 weakness. This has, again, since been changed with the addition of the Fairy typing. Speaking of the generation where Fairy typing came in, Talonflame. It has the ability Gale Wings, which, while at full health, gives it +1 priority to all of its flying type moves. Talonflame also has access to Tailwind, making it another potential Tailwind center. This being slightly more risky, as if Talonflame does get hit by a Fake Out, it will not have the priority any longer. However, to deal with this, Talonflame does sport a high speed stat. Talonflame also has Brave Bird, which was in the generation that it came out in, which was Generation 6, was its go-to attack. Back in those days, it was, you see Talonflame, this thing is likely carrying a Choice Band or a Life Orb and is going to be Brave Birding you to death for the entire game. That being until people began using Talonflame with Brave Bird plus Tailwind and Roost, and usually the heavy damage sets would use Flame Charge, while the more supportive sets would also have Taunt. But nowadays it generally just comes in, set up Tailwind, and then likely just get hit and die. Sylveon is the next Pokemon. We're going to be talking about 2 evolutions here. I pushed the other evolution that we will be talking about till after Sylveon. That way all evolutions can just, that made the list, can be talked of at once. There's generally only 2 that see Video Game Championship play. There have been a couple instances where one other has been used, but we'll talk about that after Sylveon. Pixelate, which is its hidden ability, gives all normal type moves that Sylveon uses the fairy typing. Sylveon also having, in the generation that it came out in, the attack Hyper Voice, gave Sylveon the ability to do heavy damage to 2 Pokemon at once, going through substitutes, and generally being a menace to all dragon types, which were still one of the more popular typing at the time, as there were only a small handful of fairy types that were really being used in competitive. Sylveon's evolution mechanic has almost always been tied to the Pokecare mechanic that gets introduced in the game, that going from Pokemonomy in Pokemon X and Y to likely camping and sandwich creation in Scarlet and Violet, as I am assuming will be the case this time. The second evolution we're going to be talking about is Umbreon. It's usually used as a bulky stall Pokemon with Inner Focus, keeping it from flinching, making it immune to Fake Out. It also usually uses moves such as Toxic or Confuse Ray to disrupt opponents. Foul Play in order to punish high attack powered Pokemon. And then Moonlight in order to heal itself. If it's not kept using Foul Play, it'll usually have... If it's not using a Foul Play Swagger set, it'll usually be using Snarl in order to lower special attack, in order to help it survive, it and its partner survive longer. The only other evolution that has, in my memory, seen VGC play has been Vaporeon. However, that was a very niche case, I believe, in the Sun and Moon era. And I don't remember much of it. But moving on. Klefki. Often used as a prankster screen setter. Can also learn the weather moves. Klefki has access to Foul Play and Swagger and Thunderwave. That being its primary combo back in when it first came out would be to Thunderwave an opposing Pokemon, hit it with Swagger to confuse it and raise its attack stat by 2, and then start hitting it with Foul Play, which does damage based on the opposing Pokemon's physical attack stat instead of Klefki's. If not running this set, Klefki will usually be getting used as a support Pokemon over a hindrance to the opposing team. Moving on to Sun and Moon era, we're starting with Mudsdale, a high defensive stat which, due to its ability, grows by 1 stage every time it's hit. To complement this ability and defensive stat, Mudsdale gets access to the attack Body Press, which uses the defense stat as the attack stat. Also, due to its defensive nature, it's more than likely usually paired with an Assault Vest, In some cases, leftovers is also a viable option if you already have an assault vest user and you don't want to give it some type of berry. Next, we are going to be looking at Oranguru. It is a trick room, often used as a trick room setter, with the attack Instruct, which after use allows its partner to use its chosen move a second time. At this point, after using Instruct, the partner Pokemon will use Instruct immediately. After using Instruct, the partner Pokemon will use its attack immediately. Through this, Oranguru generally fits a support role, usually only having, if anything, one damaging move, that usually being Psychic, with its third move in its set being, more often than not, a Helping Hand. Next, we have Palisand. It is just a big, bulky pile of sand with a shovel in it. When hit by a water type move with its ability, it gains 1 stage of defense and can regain its hit points using the attack Shore Up and Giga Drain. It can also raise its special defense stat with Amnesia. Palisand also has a large variety of coverage and stab moves, often being Shadow Ball and Earth Power. In the early days of Palisand, it could be paired with Weakness Policy. However, if one wants to forego the use of Shore Up and Amnesia, one can also easily give it an Assault Vest and give it several coverage moves. Due to Palisand's low speed stat, it is usually regarded as a good move to make it part of a Trick Room team. Speaking of Trick Room, we have Mimikyu. While not being a good Trick Room attacker, due to its ability to ignore the first damage it would take via attack, Mimikyu can often be used as a Trick Room setter, requiring the opposing Pokemon to double up in it to have any hope of knocking it out. Unless the attacking Pokemon has the ability Mold Breaker. Due to its disability, Mimikyu will, in many cases, use its first turn to set up, often throwing out a Swords Dance or putting Trick Room up in some cases. In the Trick Room cases, Mimikyu will usually carry Shadow Sneak if it feels it'll be overspeeding its opposing Pokemon, and can also learn Shadow Claw and Play Rough. Mimikyu is also a very small Pokemon, meaning one would usually think it's not going to do all that much. However, that's nowhere near the case, given this Pokemon does so much damage for its small stature. And with that, we have made it to Sword and Shield. And our first subject for Sword and Shield era is Corviknight. While not being used to Taxius any longer, Corviknight can still be used with Tailwind and Defog, provided these moves are still available to it, in order to control speed pacing and harm opponents try to set up. Steel and Flying is a powerful defensive typing, one which covers where they cover several of each other's weaknesses, and also having immunity to my original Gastrodon, that being a Pokemon that would carry Earth Power and Toxic, which ended up being the reason that I generally don't use Toxic any longer on Gastrodon, as in the original generation that I would use it if I was paired up against a Skarmory. Well, you all can probably guess what would happen. Either way, Steel Flying is honestly a very good defensive typing. Only having a few weaknesses. Hatterene. It is a Magic Bounce Pokemon, meaning any status-based move that targets it will be redirected to the opposing Pokemon. Because of this, Hatterene can be used as a Trick Room setter with immunity to Taunt. After it sets Trick Room, if it is your Trick Room setter of choice, Hatterene has a very powerful special attack stat and will often be able to hit you like a truck. Hatterene hits hard. Just saying. After Hatterene is its generation's counterpart, being Grimmsnarl. It is another Prankster Pokemon that has access to both Light Screen and Reflect. However, the difference between Grimmsnarl and many other double wall Prankster Pokemon is, if it comes down to it, Grimmsnarl can throw hands. It has the attack stats needed to actually start doing damage. And as generations go on and Grimmsnarl gains access to new moves, I fear this Pokemon is only going to get stronger. We only need to wait and see what moves Grimmsnarl will gain access to in this generation. With that, we come to Colossal. Colossal's signature ability gives it an effective plus 12 to its speed stat. I say plus 12 as it will instantly max its speed stat. When hit by a fire type attack or a water type attack. After using this boost to its speed, along with the weakness policy it will often carry, Colossal will often run away with the game, being able to wipe out both the opposing team by both outspeeding, out-tanking, and out-damaging them. It has base 80 in both of its attack stats, so you can then build your Colossal to be either physical or special. Next we have Indeedee, which with their hidden ability are able to set up the psychic terrain, which will grant your team immunity which will grant all Pokemon on the ground immunity to priority-based moves. This being from Prankster Pokemon, Fake Out, Quick Attack, Aqua Jet, Bullet Punch, etc., etc., etc. As long as your Pokemon is not a flying type or using Levitate, it will be immune to priority. The main difference between the male and the female, other than appearance, is the male, it is similar to Meowstic, where one form is built to be an attacker, while the other is better statted and learns better moves to be a support. In Indeedee's case, the male is built to attack, while the female is built to support. With that, we make our way to Generation 8's pseudo-legendary. I did skip a few pseudo-legendaries, as you noticed. We did not look at X and Y's, which would be Gudra, or Sun and Moons, which was Komao. These Pokemon could always find this to be their generation to shine. However, both have had their own issues in the past. Gudra's primarily being built to be defensive and having not the greatest move pool, while Komao suffered from Time for the Fairy and its abilities its move pool and typing and everything else not being the greatest for the generations that it was in and that came after. Dragapult, on the other hand, is considered to be almost a Swiss Army knife Pokemon. This thing can be a support, it can be used to be physical, or a special attacker. It can set up walls, it can set up, it can be a choice, it can be a choice scarf, a choice spec. There are several ways of building a Dragapult. I think the only thing is you probably wouldn't be able to really build it to be too tanky, given most of its base stats were put into its speed and attack. It is a Dragon Ghost type, giving it immunity to fighting type attacks and normal type attacks. And as stated, it has a high speed and attack stat. With that, we are at the end of the lesson. We are going to be looking at taking just a quick look at 3 Pokemon that came out in Legends Arceus that there is a good chance we will have access to in this game in some way, shape, or form. That being Kleavor, which for all 3 of these Pokemon, we will be looking at their abilities as far as they have been shown on both Cerebi and Bulbapedia. Note that these abilities could change, as these Pokemon have not been in an official game where they have had abilities. So we'll be starting with Kleavor, who has Sheer Force or Steadfast as its hidden. Steadfast being if it flinches, it'll gain 1 level of speed. Sheer Force is often used with Life Orb in order to create a very powerful damage dealing Pokemon. Next is Ursaluna, who has Guts, which if put under SAS condition will boost its damage, or Bulletproof, which if a move is ball or bullet based, such as Bullet Seed, Bullet Punch, Shadow Ball, Energy Ball, etc., 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 it will be immune to that damage. The biggest thing with Ursaluna is its base 150 attack, meaning Ursaluna will be able to hit like a truck. With Guts, this thing is going to be scary if it has Facade. I expect any Ursaluna usage to be more than likely Flame Orbed, with Facade as a suicide attacker. Next is Sneasler, base 120 speed and 130 attack, with Poison Touch. This is the evolution of Hisuian Sneasel. With Poison Touch, any damage that is physical or mainly contact based that Sneasler deals will have a chance of poisoning the target. If this activates, Sneasler will be able to, after bringing a Pokemon down to its Sturdy or Focus Sash, will poison that said Pokemon and still have it die that turn. Meaning, if you're lucky, you won't have to double into an opposing Pokemon in order to take it out. And with that, we have reached the end of the lesson plan for today. This is the first lesson, lesson 0, being released, hopefully, looking at the time, as Sun and Moon, as Scarlet and Violet are coming out. So hopefully, I hope that you all enjoy the games, and if you want to see further lessons, feel free to follow me on Twitch or check into my Twitter, where I will be posting when I go live with further Pokemon content. With that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and goodbye. Later, everyone.